Finally,
all right.
We got Mr. Dexter Wansel.
Well, before we start talking, I just want to let everybody know that this is Dexter Wansel. He is a Grammy-winning R&B jazz fusion arranger, musician, composer, conductor, synthesist, and A&R director.
Yes.
He's the A&R director, Philly International.
Finally, the first guest in the history of the 624. It will go down in history as the inaugural video podcast, and we couldn't pick a better guest.
Absolutely.
Because we want to be iconic at some point, so you might as well start with an iconic guest, right? Make sense?
Are you hearing us? Oh!
He's like, these people are crazy.
Really?
Yeah, really. We really feel this way as well as many other people that knew that you were going to be coming onto the show today. So thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Dexter Wansel. How you doing?
I am well. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Appreciation is ours.
You look
Absolutely.
amazing too. You really look amazing. So once again, thanks for joining the 624. We just kind of want to start off with just talking to you and probing your brain a little bit, if that's okay. Okay, the first thing I want to know is, where were you born?
I was born in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. My grandmother on my father's side worked in houses, as a maid in what is known as the main line of Philadelphia.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Wow. So who are your parents? Like, what were they like, and what were their names?
My mother is Phyllis Morris. She's actually from Lewis, Rehoboth, Delaware. And my father is Earlston Wansel, and he was actually from Virginia, between Virginia and Gettysburg, PA. Okay. He was a drummer. Actually, he had the first group in the Philadelphia main line that was integrated back in the late 40s and early 50s.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah, I forget what they were called. It'll come to me.
It'll come to you. Absolutely. So how many siblings did you have? How many folks were in your house growing up?
I have a brother that's a year older and a sister that's like 15 years younger.
So you have a brother and a sister?
Yes.
Okay.
My brother lives in Delaware. My sister is living in Georgia. She moved from New York to Georgia. She's a book writer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Her name is Terry Woods, and she wrote books like True to the Game, which became a movie.
Yes, indeed. All right, we'll probably circle back around to talk about that a little bit. How would you describe your childhood? So you're one of three.
Yes.
So
my childhood between Delaware and Philadelphia. Part of my childhood was raised in the Nanticoke area of Delaware called Rabbits Ferry. And I went to the Rabbits Ferry or to the Indian Mission School, Indian Mission Church there. And then part of my life was raised on Bouvier Street in North Philadelphia as a child, where my mother and my stepfather, Clinton Woods, lived.
Wow, okay. It must have been a fun time growing up with a sister and brother. I'm one of 9. So I had many brothers and sisters, and boy, I tell you, it was quite a thing. You couldn't put nothing in the refrigerator. It's like it's gone, stuff getting broken, and so one of 3 sounds. I probably could have dealt with that a little better.
I got a question, Mr. Wansel. I mean, we all like to know when it all started. Like, how did the music thing happen from childhood? Can you break that down?
Well, on the farm, I used to, my great-grandmother, who was a Nanticoke Indian, I used to walk around with my uncle's guitar trying to play it as a kid, and she would call me a pequee, which means music in Nanticoke, Lenai Lenape,
Oh, wow.
And then in North Philly, my stepfather's brother was named Georgie Woods. And he had shows at the Uptown Theater, and when me and my mom and my brother moved in with him back in 1957, 58, he would take us to the Uptown because he worked there counting people going in the front door, but he would have us backstage. And before I knew it, I was a little errand boy back there. So between playing the little guitar on the farm and hearing the musicians and Doc Bagby's band at the Uptown back then, that's really what got me started, because I just fell in love with music, between the two things.
Now, I'm a visual person. Walk us through the moment you walked in the Uptown and you knew you were where you belonged. What was that like?
It was pretty much the very first day, and then after that first day, Herb Staten, I would get out of school and run right from Claghorn Elementary School right into, which was only 3 blocks from the Uptown. Our house was on Revere Street, was only 3 blocks from the Uptown. And I would just run to the Uptown, especially when there were shows there, and go backstage. And Herb Staten, who was the backstage manager, a lot of times would kick me out. But then one day Georgie said to him, let him stay, we're going to put him to work. So then I started going to the drugstore and to the sandwich shops and to the cleaners for all the different artists and stuff like that, picking up their stuff.
How old were you?
I became errand boy there from like the end of 58 to the end of 63, 64, where we moved from that part of North Philly up into Tioga, and then I couldn't make it down there anymore. But for 4 or 5 years, I was there at the Uptown backstage, worked with all the artists, got to hang out with so many wonderful artists, worked the very first Motortown review, worked all the Ike and Tina Turner reviews, the King Records reviews, which had great artists. But of course, the star of the King Records tour was, those early years, was of course James Brown and the Famous Flames. I would work the shows for a lot of different artists that came through, local artists like the Vibrations and Frankie Lyman.
Tina Turner and Ike?
Huh?
Tina Turner and Ike? Ike and Tina Turner?
Review, yeah, I worked
They were
that.
part of that. Mm-hmm.
And I used to have to take meals up on his bus, and then one day, because he never got off the bus, he would always stay on the bus until shows, until the show started. And then I would have to go back there and take his meals, and then one day, one of the people got off angry and kind of like tussled and messed up, and I went to put his plate on the bus and ran as far away from there as I could.
He had a reputation for that anger thing.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah, well,
and believe it or not, later on over in London, I actually produced one of the Ikettes, P.P. Arnold, later on when I became a producer. Yeah. I actually produced her over in London.
Wow.
Nice. Now, you mentioned James Brown. What was it like being around him?
He was good. I mean, he was interesting. This was before songs like Papa's Got a Brand New Bag or anything like that, before the funk really hit.
Was his hair fried, dyed, and laid to the side?
Well...
No, he had the afro back then.
Oh, was the afro?
Please, Try Me, Night Train, and he would play the piano, but... he was okay, and the Famous Flames were really good, and that King Records tour also had a group that there's a thrill up on the hill, let's go. That group, it had come to me,
yeah.
But I really liked working for them more so than for James Brown and the Famous Flames. I would hold towels at the side of the stage for James Brown, and he would dance off the stage, grab a top, face and neck and stuff, throw it back in my face on the stage,
Yeah.
Now I had one more question up. Did the musical production start by watching these acts at an early age, or are you just watching as a participant, or were you starting to conceive music in your mind at that point, at that young age?
Yeah, I was feeling the music. I was kind of singing songs in my head, of course, all of their songs,
Sure.
And there were so many musicians that showed. Doc Bagby showed me my first chords on the organ.
Okay.
Along with Cortez, he showed me some chords and how to sit there and play. and I could never get the foot pedals down, playing the bit because I was too short,
Yeah, I got you. So by them showing you chords on the organ, is that what kind of made you geared toward the piano and keys and all of that? Because you did say you played guitar and all that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jimi Hendrix would show me some.
Ooh.
He always with the Isley Brothers, and he would show me. I see his picture up there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Show me chords on the guitar and play lines, and he was really reserved when the Isleys would leave and go across the street to Miss Pearl's or leave out and go back to the hotel or something. Mm-hmm. He would always stay behind, and we would play a game where we would hide from each other.
Wow.
And, then whoever saw it, the other person first would slap leather.
Oh, wow. Made some fun out of that, huh? What about some of the, I know Georgie Woods, he was iconic on the radio, WDAS, and he produced a lot of those shows, or pretty much all the shows at the Uptown. Did he bring comedians in as well?
Oh my goodness, all the great comedians.
Take us there. We want to know. Flip Wilson,
Moms Mabley was there. Flip Wilson was always there. And Flip liked to gamble, so sometimes Georgie would have to loan him money to get to the next gig because he was losing his money playing cards backstage.
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah, but Flip was always funny and clean. Flip was funny and clean.
He had a clean
Slappy
time.
White and Red Fox, they were dirty.
Ooh, yeah.
They cuss up the storm,
You know it.
And they would do this act where they would team up together, and then the final midnight show, that Saturday night, that last show, they always had this thing where they would play like they were drinking whiskey all the 10 days. The shows lasted 10 days. They would come in on a Wednesday and then and end on the following Saturday night midnight show, almost 2 weeks. But anyway, they would do a routine where they would act like they were drinking liquor out of a bottle and getting drunk. But they was really water all week, all the shows, until that last midnight show on a Saturday night.
They went live.
Real alcohol.
Yes.
Heck yeah, and that's probably their best show too, right?
They would drink that bottle of alcohol and get drunk on the stage.
Wow.
And then people, that's not real, y'all not real. And then the final thing they would do was that they would light a match and a piece of paper on the stage and spit the alcohol on it. It would flame up.
Oh, to prove, yeah. That's with alcohol. Now, you mentioned Moms Mabley. She was an iconic.
Oh, she was amazing. She was a great checker player. I would play checkers with her all the time. I could never beat her. And then she would play parcheesi and chess with other people. But let me tell you something about Moms. Whenever Moms went out to party, or when she would leave the show and go to the Blue Note or to the VPA club, she would dress up in a 3-piece suit.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Impressive.
And with that voice, you'd be like, wait a minute, who is she, a guy or a hot man? Or that voice, my God.
Well, I mean, it's kind of revealing,
Yeah.
Now,
3-piece suit with the tie and everything, vest and coat and jacket,
wow.
and a hat on, and she would leave out, and go to the VPA club,
Now, I mean, speaking of, having to don a new look or create a new character for yourself, I know especially back in the day, a lot of the African American artists had to do things to fit in or get accepted or to get onto the broader, to be accepted by the broader media. Have you ever had any of that experience or know anything about that?
Well, don't forget that the Uptown was very much like the Apollo or the Regal.
Oh, that's right.
In Chicago, or the Howard in DC. It was the best place for Black artists to perform at, because they had opened the doors for us to perform starting in the early 50s,
Right.
Prior to that, there was a real chitlin circuit of clubs and venues that we had to play, where we could only go into the back door, that kind of thing, to access the stage. And the Cotton Club is a great example of that.
Sure.
Right. Right.
Where in the 30s, 40s, and the early 50s, artists could not go in the front door. They could not mingle with the crowds or anything like that.
Wow. Wow.
And yeah, so I mean, many artists would sit down and tell me about their experiences. And I was telling Tisa earlier or yesterday, something like that, about Pigmeat Markham. Pigmeat Markham came out of the minstrel shows.
That's
you know?
right. That's right.
Yeah.
He wear blackface and get paid, you know, doing that kind of caricature. Minstrel shows were actually started after prior to the Emancipation Proclamation by white people, where they would put on blackface and make fun of us. Basically.
Al Jolson, yep.
Yeah.
But we took it over during the Reconstruction and after slavery. We kind of took over the shows, and we would use blackface. Burt Williams is a great example of that, where he used blackface, but became world famous for doing it. But because black artists decided they didn't want to do it anymore, it became sort of like a complex situation, because in a lot of places around, especially through the Midwest and the South, if you didn't wear blackface for your shows, you wouldn't get hired.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah, it became.
So that's what.
Well, speaking of which, even through all those times and to the current day, we all need soundtracks. And that being said, I want to know about your first song you've ever wrote, or the one that you felt was presentable to the general public. You recall that particular song?
Well, I wrote a lot of songs, and, you know, I would sit in Sigma Sound, and I would sit, you know, in the lobby at when Philly International was across the street above the Schubert Theater at 250 South Broad instead of 309 South Broad, where Cameo Parkway was. I would submit songs, which I did for 3 years before I finally got a song that was accepted. Now, I did do a song. I was a member of Instant Funk, and I was a member of Yellow Sunshine at one point prior to 75.
Okay.
So I did work on the Yellow Sunshine album, and I had a song where I got partial writing credit for called Happiness on the Yellow Sunshine album. So that was in 72 that I recorded my first songs and then played in the studio with Yellow Sunshine to get that album done. But by 73, I was being hired as the synthesis guy who sat in the lobby waiting, you know, to be hired to come up with the sound on Sigma's Putney, or by 74, my own synthesizer, which was an ARP 2600. But the first song I ever recorded that I wrote was in 1974, and it was for Billy Paul, and it was called Billy's Back Home.
Oh, wow.
And one of his albums.
Did that get airplay, or what? Or did that?
Yeah, I got airplay.
So what was that like hearing your song on the radio for the first time?
It was
surreal. Great. It was great. It was wonderful.
It was just great.
Yeah, because I can only imagine that hearing it on the radio, especially because by the you know, just kind of going back a little bit, by the early 70s, you were an accomplished musician. I mean, you had started young. You were playing guitar. You played cello for a while, and I'm just kind of going over these things just to kind of take our listeners to your story. You know.
Well, the cello I started when we had moved from North Philly up into Tioga. By the time I got into the 7th grade at Gillespie Junior High, I was getting attacked or beat up by the kids there, because I was from that part of North Philly and I wasn't from Tioga. You know what I'm saying? And so I would stay after school until everybody left. And then one day I was walking down the hallways, and this woman stopped me. And her name was Mary Colbert. She asked me what I was still doing, and I explained. And she said, well, do you play any instruments? I said, no. So she was actually the music teacher there at early Gillespie. And she took me into the music room and said, here, hold this. And she gave me a flute. So I started playing the flute. And then she said, you want to try the violin? I tried the violin and immediately put it down. She said, have you cello? I play the cello. Would you like to try it? So she sat me down in a chair and put me with the cello, and I immediately fell in love with the cello. And I became a cellist and started playing. She had me playing locally and learning how to read music at Settlement and learning how to play the cello and being taught by various teachers. And I became one of the soloists for the Young People's Concert Series in Philadelphia back when I was 13, 14, and by the time I was 15, I was doing master classes at Curtis.
Curtis,
You know?
yeah. I was going to ask you about that.
I was supposed to go into Curtis by the time I got out of high school, and me and my best friend, who I met in the 8th grade, was Stanley Clark. He's a bass player.
Right.
Yes.
And he's Philly, and we had our first little group called the Speakers.
All right.
It was me and him, and we auditioned for my Georgie's wife had a group called Brenda and the Tabulations.
Okay.
So me and Stanley auditioned to be their band, you know.
Nice.
Man, they had no idea who you guys were going to become.
Keyboard.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know about the keyboard, but we auditioned anyway, and his wife looked at us and said, "Well, you know, y'all keep working."
Okay, all right. But it got you into the keys. Now, can you still play the cello? I'm just curious.
Huh?
Is the cello still something that you're interested in, or do you still play? Could you still play the cello? Okay, I wanted to get that question in there because
the day my cello ended was me and Stanley and his sister Grace were leaving a concert. We were in Roxborough High School by then, and we were in the 11th grade, and we were coming out of a concert. And so I said, "Let's see who can throw their Coke bottles into the sewer across the street." We were waiting for the 8 bus, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I threw mine first, and it went past the sewer, and I heard it hit a car.
Oh my goodness!
It was a car.
It was what?
A cop car.
a cop car.
Oh my goodness!
Okay.
And there was in the car.
And we all know what that could possibly lead into. I don't even want to get started.
Down across Ridge Avenue and grabbed me, and we're trying to grab Stanley, and I said, "No, I threw the bottle. I didn't know y'all were there." So I got expelled, and I was 16 at the time, and I had a choice in front of the judge either to go to juvie or go into the Army. So I of course, I chose the Army. And the day I turned 17, I was on a train to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Wow. Appreciate your service, by the way.
Absolutely. So that's what
Definitely
prompted you
appreciate
to
your
go.
service. Yeah.
That's what prompted you to go into the
It
service.
turned out good because I started playing while I got back from China. I was stationed in China for a couple of years where I did both communications and intelligence.
Okay.
And when I got back from China at Fort Hood, Texas, places like that, I started playing at the USOs, you know, and stuff like that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
actually joined a group in Texas that really tried to keep me when I got out of the service.
Oh, wow.
But I wanted to come home to Philly.
You wanted to
so
come
I
home to
came
Philly.
home.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Sigma's.
In
Mhm. Go ahead. And you
Yeah,
were
that
going
was
to say?
1970.
1970. That's right.
Wow.
All right. Well, does this address ring a bell? 212 North 12th Street in Philadelphia?
Yeah, that's Sigma Sound Recording
There you
Studio.
go. Founded by Joseph Tarzia in 1968. So that sort of became
Yep.
your home. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, how did you?
Well, initially, like I was saying, by 72, I was sitting in there and trying to audition for piano, sessions. And one of the engineers asked me if I knew anything about a Putney synthesizer because they had one and they needed to program it for some sessions. And I said, sure, which I really didn't.
You didn't
but,
You had a lot of confidence in yourself.
I got it down in 5 minutes. I was getting sounds. It had little pegs,
Wow.
that you could switch the oscillators and the ADSRs around, and the envelope generators around that way. And then it had the knobs up here that you could turn and stuff. And I was getting sounds all the time. And that's how I got my first gigs.
Wow.
Was I was getting synth sounds, and then I started getting piano gigs, So a lot of it was credited, some of it wasn't, back in 72, 73, by the time me and Yellow Sunshine and Instant Funk started working, I was getting a lot of credits.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, Sigma was the place to be. I mean, let's see, it offered a 24-track recording ability as well as console automation, which a lot of studios didn't have at that time. Is that true? Would that be true?
It did have 24-track recording, but initially when I started working there, the big board in A was 16 tracks.
Okay.
They got the Neve in, I think, in 75. I think they finally got the Neve in. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But I think that's when they finally got that 24-track Neve up in there. And then, of course, they were able to put two 24-track real machines up and started making 48 tracks.
Got you. Now, you said the A room. Was that the main room where they did mostly all the recording?
Yeah, that was the A room. Yeah, that's where I would go up and do the Putney. And I think in the B room at that time, it was an 8-track.
Oh, okay.
But then that became a 16-track very quickly, and then a 24-track. By 75, they were both rooms were 24-track.
Gotcha. And how many rooms did they have? Because I read that it was like 10 rooms, 24/7. Like the studio never shut down.
2 rooms. 2 rooms.
It was 2 rooms.
A was
okay.
upstairs and B was downstairs. The rest was all.
I'm sure a lot of great names came through that.
There at night because they had showers in the back and a sofa back there, so I would kind of crash there instead of spending money on the bus to get home.
Smart move.
Well, they definitely had an they had an extensive clientele there for sure.
To get on their nerves, trust me, because I just wanted to be a part of it, and eventually Carl and Roland Chambers asked me to join Yellow Sunshine. And Bunny Sigler asked me to be the keyboard player in Instant Funk for his tours. So I would go out on tour with Bunny and Instant Funk, and then I would tour a little bit with Yellow Sunshine. But because Carl and Roland were members of MFSB, they preferred kind of staying in the studio, making that money, the studio money, because we weren't really making money on the road as Yellow Sunshine.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So MFSB stands for mother, father, sister, brother?
Yeah.
I just looked that up. I didn't know what that stood for, to be honest. I was like, oh, okay, that's what it stands for. So awesome.
I became their live keyboard player. Bobby Martin had me start as their live keyboard player at, whenever they went out to do concerts. I was their live keyboard player from 74 to 76. Mm-hmm. And then when he left in 76, Don Ronaldo, who was the main contractor and leader of MFSB, asked me to become their new live conductor, which I did for 3 years. Nice. I conducted them at the first Black Music Month at the White House in 79, where Deanna Williams, Ed Wright, and Kenny Gamble had started that first Black Music Month, and Jimmy Carter decided to celebrate it. So we all went to the White House on the lawn, and we put on a big show, and I was the music director and conductor.
Wow, I would love to see the footage on that.
Yeah, that's.
I'm sure it's in some archive somewhere. That sounds amazing. Say it again. What'd you say?
Somewhere.
Somewhere it is. I'm sure. Now, Kenny Gamble, he. Obviously, Sigma became the home of all these recordings and all. How did he become affiliated with Sigma Sound? And is that where you actually met him and made your connection?
I really made the major connection through Yellow Sunshine, because Carl and Roland Chambers were not only just members of MFSB, they were also original members of Kenny Gamble and the Romeos. Carl played the drums. Roland, his brother Roland, played guitar. Tom Bell was the keyboard player, and Kenny Gamble and the Romeos. And that's how I met Kenny, through Carl and Roland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Roland wrote a lot of charts for MFSB, and he played guitar on most everything that came out in the 70s for Kenny.
Okay, nice. So all of that work that was going on at Sigma, and you meeting Kenny Gamble, was Leon Huff in the picture at that point, or were they already? So they were already partners.
Had labels prior to Philly International Records. There was Gamble Records, which all the artists, some of the artists were signed to Gamble Records, and they had Huff actually had a label once called Huff and Puff.
Yes.
And they were actually doing business out of New York before they really got into Philly at 250 South Broad Street and started, shifting things away from New York. Yeah.
When you said Huff and Puff, that's not Sean Combs. It's not the same Puff.
No. No.
Okay, just checking.
That was an early label that Leon Huff had out of New York.
Okay.
I'm sure you're joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking. She don't know when I'm joking sometimes.
Oh boy.
I think it could be one or two artists on his early label. That label was in the early 60s. Gamble
early
Records
60s, yeah.
started out
Gamble
in the
Records.
60s.
So it was actually Kenny Gamble, Leon Huff, and Tom Bell. So he was a part of this as well. What part did Tom Bell play in this whole?
Tom Bell wrote a lot of the arrangements for stuff they were doing. He was an original member of Kenny Gamble and the Romeos, and then when Kenny started producing and stuff, Tom would write arrangements for him. But also Tom and Joe Tarzia kind of met up, and they kind of found a couple of groups that they wanted to work with, and one specifically, of course, was the Delphonics. That first Delphonics album, Tom Bell produced and arranged, with La La Means I Love You and all that stuff.
Classic.
And I Blow Your Mind and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Tom Bell did that.
Wow.
He created all that beautiful music.
Yeah.
Wow. That we still listen to today.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Tom was one of my early mentors. Him and Bobby Martin, I would show them some of my orchestrations or string and horn arrangements, and they would say Tom was really good early on with string sounds. And of course, Bobby was great with horn sounds. And that first big hit for Philly International was Backstabbers on the OJs.
Oh yeah.
Tom wrote the strings and Bobby wrote the horns.
Wow. Nothing like the Philadelphia horn sound.
It's nothing like it, really. I mean, when you listen to it, it takes you somewhere.
Say that again.
I said, even today, when I listen to it, and most people that I know, the music just takes you somewhere. All the arrangements.
Great writers, Kenny and Leon were such great writers, and Bobby Martin was such a great arranger. I really think that Bobby Martin deserves a lot of credit because his arrangements really helped make the songs the great successes they were. I mean, Me and Mrs. Jones.
Yeah.
Arrangement is like, or When Will I See You Again? You know what I'm saying?
Now, did you guys use like full orchestras or how?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a full orchestra, but we would have like anywhere from 8 to 16 violins, anywhere from 6 to 12 horns. Playing at one time. Then, of course, we would always have the rhythm section. Now, sometimes we would do live recordings. Pardon me. Live recordings was where you go into the studio, all the musicians would be there, the rhythm section, the horns, the strings, the background singers, and the lead vocalists, whoever they were, and we would cut the tracks that way.
Wow.
That was called live. But what became really systematic eventually was cutting the rhythm track first,
right?
And then bringing in the lead vocalists and doing their vocals, and then adding backgrounds,
okay,
and then adding strings and horns before you mixed.
Okay.
That became the system that we all kind of worked with after a while, especially by the mid-70s.
Yeah,
okay.
Tracking. Plus, you have a lot more control over the individual
right, you
instruments.
have control over everything,
sounds.
and you had more tracks. Yeah. Back in the day when there was only 4 or 6 track machines, everything had to be done live. Like Motown, most of that early stuff, that's live.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's take.
It had a different sound.
Or if Barry Gordy didn't like it, then 2 or 3 takes.
I hear you. It had that sound, but I know they've taken a lot of that music and digitally remastered it, I guess, to get a cleaner sound maybe, but it's just something about listening to that music in the era. It doesn't bother me to listen to it in its old sound.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes you feel like you're there.
Right. There was very little mixing going on back then. But then once they got to 8 tracks and 16 tracks, mixing became very relevant.
Absolutely. So how did you get your first deal? With Philly? Yes, with the whole Philly International and deal, I mean, I know you're taking us through a little journey here, but you had a lot of affiliation and you were working with them as musicians, but there had to come a point where it's like, okay, sign on the dotted line. We need you to do this. So that's what we kind of want to.
Well, what happened was I had started a company. Me and T Life had started a company called Mills and Mills.
I know T Life.
And we were going to do productions on various artists, one especially being Bubbles, or Evelyn Champagne King.
Mm-hmm.
And but then Gamble, because I had written, there was an album that MFSB did that they asked me to write arrangements for, and it was called Philadelphia Freedom.
Oh.
So I wrote the arrangements for Philadelphia Freedom, and I actually wrote a couple of songs on that album that turned out pretty good, you know. And that's when they offered me a contract to sign as a in-house producer, writer, arranger. Plus Bobby Martin had left, Tom Bell had left, you know, so it was kind of like, I was kind of like being put in that position of helping to write arrangements for not just Gamble and Huff, but for all the other producers there, as well as myself, you know. And so me and T kind of broke up right after we had did Evelyn stuff, and I was signed at PIR and immediately began writing songs, doing productions and arrangements for all of the artists signed at the time.
So you were like the in-house songwriter, producer, arranger there at that point.
The only in-house songwriter, producer, arranger.
Wow.
There were other songwriter, producers like John and Gene, you know what I'm saying, Sherman Marshall, you know, so on and so forth. But I was the only in-house songwriter, producer, arranger. Gotcha.
You had some great collaborators. I know you collaborated with, like you said, T Life, even Kenny Gamble, Vinnie Garrett, Bunny Sigler, Cynthia Biggs. She wrote a lot of music with you.
Dr. Cynthia Biggs and I kind of, what happened was they were letting her go. She had been a member there of a group called City Limits, and they had let City Limits go after they did that album. And and she was trying to write with various writers. Ted Wortham was an in-house writer at the time, but they were all let go. And Cynthia asked me one day, look, they're letting me go. Do you want to, because we used to ride the bus together back and forth to our homes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Early on, and I told her, I said, let's write, and I'll tell Kenny, you know. So I went into Kenny's office after they had signed me about 6 months later, and I said, Kenny, I really want Cynthia Biggs to stay here because you've got me doing all this stuff, all of these productions, and everybody's asking me to write arrangements for them, you know, and you got me doing this new album, you know, so I need help. And so that's how we kind of became partners. And she was a great lyricist. You know, I just throw a basic lyric ideal at her and she would take it and just finish the song.
Wow.
You know, I would like the basic, you know, harmonic melodic structure and give her a basic lyric to work with and give her a demo on reel-to-reel tape, and she would take it from there.
Well, it was definitely a match made in heaven because you guys wrote some really beautiful music together.
Absolutely.
Definitely. For sure.
Yeah.
She's wonderful writer, wonderful collaborators you guys were. We kind of want to know, what was your relationship like being at Philly International? What was it like? What was your interaction like with Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff? Was there ever, were y'all boys? Did y'all ever hang out, dinner? Did y'all ever bang heads? Or what was that like?
Give us a
No, we were never boys.
Okay. All right, that sums it up.
Right?
They were business cats, but on occasion we would meet each other. Across the street from 309 was a place called the Fantasy Lounge.
Gotcha.
So there everyone would go, you know. We would all go there to take breaks, to kind of cool off, you know. Loretta Adams owned the Fantasy Lounge, and she also owned Loretta's Hi-Hat, which was over in New Jersey. And we would go there and, you know, hang out with her. She was a close friend of Kenny's and helped him early on in his career, you know. And that was where we all would kind of run into each other, you know. But otherwise, no, it was pretty much business, you know. Me and the artists developed incredible relationships. We would hang out. Me and Teddy would travel the country.
Oh wow!
Wow, that must
that must have a fly on the wall for that one.
You know it.
Me and Lou Rawls and me and Billy Paul got so close that they would visit and start hanging out with us and our kids, me and Judy's kids, and they became Uncle Lou and Uncle Billy.
Nice.
Yeah. Wow.
So we had some great relationships, you know, and and there was a time that when Kenny and Leon got so busy with their other endeavors that I became the A&R director there. So I really had good relationships with the artists and making sure that their albums came out and everybody was happy.
Absolutely.
And they were.
And they were.
You know?
Being A&R, who are two of the first artists that you signed? Do you remember? Or?
Well, I helped sign the Stylistics.
Stylistics?
Okay.
Yeah, they always ask me, which artists do you think we should sign? I never had fiduciary control.
Okay.
Which eventually made me quit being the A&R director because I wanted to sign Luther Vandross.
Oh wow!
And I wanted to sign Kashif and his band.
Right.
And unfortunately, I got a letter with Luther Vandross. Well, I'm not going to say what the letter said, telling me they weren't going to sign him because that he was basically just doing background work, and I didn't believe that. When you hear his lead vocals for Change,
oh my God,
I thought they were amazing,
incredible.
You know,
and the world agrees with you.
Sign him, and I would talk to him on the phone, and he would get upset. He'd start crying on the phone with me when I would talk. And his manager, Kendall Mentor, wanted me to have him in the studio and do a live performance for Kenny and Leon, but Leon didn't want it, so we didn't do it.
Wow.
And with Kashif, I actually brought Kashif in and had them perform in our studio at Philly International Records, and they had a sound that was incredible.
Yes, indeed.
You know, and he used that sound on all the artists he produced, you know. Yeah. And I was trying to get him signed as a producer and an artist, you know, but they passed on it. So I didn't have fiduciary control. And so that kind of like, when the Luther Vandross thing kind of made me kind of quit as the A&R director.
Oh wow! Well, they definitely passed on two greats. I started
going on the road trying to produce the albums that they had me do with my name on it. You know.
Sure. Well, you the list is so long of the artists that you work with: Shirley Jones, Dee Dee Sharp, the Delphonics, Gene Carn, the OJs, the Intruders, Archie and the Drells, the Stylistics, the Jones Girls, Brandy Wells, Teddy Pendergrass. Should I keep going? Jermaine Jackson and the Jacksons, Miles J, Pieces of a Dream, Evelyn Champagne King, Patti LaBelle, Phyllis Hyman, and Lou Rawls. Like, not in that order necessarily, but just to give all the listeners, all the people you've worked with, and there's so many more. What was your approach to producing vocals at that time, or producing an artist? Because each one of them that you've worked with, they're so different, you know. So did you have a certain method to bring them in? Like, for example, maybe like Patti LaBelle or Evelyn Champagne King. Like,
Not really.
No? You just let them do their thing?
I would try different in the studio with various artists based on what they sound like.
Okay.
I would try different things, and what felt different, what felt good to all of us, that's what we would go with. It's like with Patti, whenever I was in the studio with Patti, and I only ever did 3 productions on Patti. You know, I did Shoot 'Em on Sight, The Best Is Yet to Come with Grover, and
If Only You Knew.
What's the other one?
If Only You Knew.
If Only You Knew.
If Only You Knew.
So every one of the tracks that I would do with her, vocally, I would do like 5 or 6 takes, and then I'd say, okay, I think I got enough. You go home, and then I would take each take and find the parts that I felt really balanced each other out, and put one vocal together from those takes. Nice. That's what I would do with Patti. With Teddy, I would make sure that Teddy sung as much as possible on pitch, because he would always be under pitch sometimes. But I would always say, Teddy, you got to sing it a little sharper, a little sharper. He would get angry at me.
I was going to ask you, any drama there?
Screaming when he would sing, but he did that naturally anyway, you know. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
My favorite thing is when Cecil Womack, when I was the A&R director, he bought me. He came to Philly with songs for Teddy, and one of them was Love TKO, and so I did Love TKO on Teddy, and Teddy just it was like he didn't want to do it because he was so used to the other stuff he was doing, which was like sex symbol stuff, Not to say he didn't do other songs that were like that, but I said, Teddy, look, show them a heart. Let's show them a heart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so starting out, looking back, he would start real soft, and I would get him to start real soft. And I really love that vocal that he did on Love TKO because I think it's like, I think it was good for him,
It was fantastic.
That rhythm section. Wow, that rhythm section alone.
Yeah. So when I cut the rhythm, it's funny you mentioned that. Because I cut the rhythm on that. What I wanted it to sound like, I didn't want it to really have a Philly sound. I wanted it to have a Soulsville sound.
That's exactly what I got
like
from it.
Memphis
That song still takes me.
Another love.
TKO.
Old school R&B kind of flavor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's
in the pocket.
That makes people back and think. Yeah. I feel you.
Y'all did the damn thing on that one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
All that music. You, with all these different collaborations and artists that you worked with, you at one point you obviously got your own deal and started making your own music, and you have several albums to your credit. Life on Mars, What the World is Coming to. Well, let me do this in order. Yeah, Life on Mars, 1976. What the World is Coming to, 77. Voyager, 78. So you put it every year. Time is Slipping Away, 79. And then you did an album called Capture, and then Digital Groove World. So all those albums to your credit. At what point was it a simultaneous thing where you were producing artists, A&R, and did your own album, or were there breaks in between? So you were doing all that simultaneously.
No in betweens.
You had a lot of hats and a lot of arms.
Yeah. There was a lot. Sometimes I would be so overwhelmed with work. I had an apartment in the building right behind 309, but I would sleep most of the nights when I was doing a lot. Like if I had a string and horn section in the studio at 10 a.m., the following day I would sleep in the drum booth because I wouldn't get out the studio doing overdubs or vocals until like 1-2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, but for about 8 years it was like being underwater,
Yeah, I can imagine that. And of course, like your family life. I mean, you're obviously married, you have children. How many children do you have, as a matter of fact?
All total?
Yeah, why not? We want to know the real Dexter Wansel.
Well, my wife and I, Judy, we have between us 10 kids, 24 grandkids, and 5 great-grandkids.
Beautiful. Wow. I bet you the Christmases are like, woohoo! But during those years, you spent a lot of time in the studio, working, doing your thing. How did that affect your family life? And, of course, you had some supportive people in your life, obviously.
Yeah, it affected. There's good and bad in everything, And the bad was I wasn't there a lot for a lot that was going on. But then the good was that when I was there, I made the most of it.
I'm sure.
I made sure I made the most of it. That when I did spend time with my wife and kids, that I spent the best time I could with them. So they became very adaptive. And they adapted to all the hard work that I was doing in many ways. And a lot of times after 1984, it wasn't just about doing a lot of hard work, it was about surviving. Because when PIR shut down, I had to do work all around the world, in Europe and in other states and stuff like that to survive, you know.
Sure. Being on the road, what was that like?
And
I mean,
good and bad and everything. Some shows were good, some shows were bad. You know, it depended on. Once I did Constitution Hall, and we barely got through it without being booed.
Oh.
You know, because what I did was we were doing an R&B show where there were all these R&B acts, but my band wanted to do fusion music. So I said, okay, we'll try it. We're going to do fusion music. And we barely got off the stage.
Oh, wow.
So it's a required taste.
Next night, I said that we're going to do nothing but our R&B set. And they said, okay. And we got standing ovation. So it depends on where you're at and what you're doing, you know, out there. I used to open up for many acts. You know, I did 20 shows opening up for Frankie Beverly and Maze. Or Absolutely. It wasn't called Maze back then. It was Frankie Beverly and something else. I can't remember the name. But anyway, I used to open up shows for other artists, Richard Pryor, Patti LaBelle. You know, and depending on where I was and who I was with, was the set I would do.
Gotcha.
See what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
If I were at a jazz show, then we would do a lot of the instrumentals, you know.
Well,
if I was an R&B show, then the singers I had in the band, they would sing the R&B songs.
Right.
Gotcha.
So you had a variety that you could pull out of your hat at any time.
Right.
Awesome. Well, your music has definitely influenced the world and an entire new generation of hip-hop, the world of hip-hop, through sampling. And you've been sampled so many times, it's unbelievable. I had to make a couple of notes. Your 1975 theme from the Planet's drum beat intro has been hailed as being one of the first foundational beats of hip-hop music. That's incredible.
Wow.
That's incredible, and it has been sampled quite a bit. I know.
Sony says that it's been sampled over 1,000 times, but it's only been licensed over 400 times.
The numbers don't add up.
They don't add up, right?
Well, because prior to 1989 or the early 90s, people were sampling stuff and weren't doing licenses, you know, until it went to court. It went to court in the early 90s. There was this one group that got sued for that, and that kind of started the whole licensing thing back in 91 or 92, something like that.
Exactly. And some of those...
But that beat was done back in 1974. It didn't come out until 76.
Wow. Yeah. I see why it is the foundation of it. And some of the folks that sampled it, Kanye West, Lil Wayne, Drake, Rick Ross, J. Cole, Eric B. and Rakim, Wiz Khalifa, Lil Kim, Ice-T, Ice Cube, Kendrick Lamar, and Jay-Z. So your name is on the credits with a lot of them. They've used your music. It's been like, wow, foundation. That's just amazing. Are there any samples or any songs with your samples in it that you dislike or like better, or do you have any opinion of it at all?
I like it's not the most known sample, of course, but my favorite so far. Rick Ross sampled an orchestral piece I wrote and produced called "Time is the Teacher," and he called it Maybach Music 2. And it's him.
Familiar with
it's Kanye West and Lil Wayne. Yeah, and that's kind of my favorite.
Okay, what about Jay-Z actually sampled "Hurry Up This Way Again," and his song is called "Politics."
Politics as usual.
Politics as usual. That one's kind of hot, I thought.
Yeah, it's pretty popular.
Wiz Khalifa, these were samples from theme from the Planet. J. Cole, J. Cole sampled you twice in Lights Please and Everybody Dies. Wiz Khalifa.
Wow.
Yep, that's in Spotlight.
I have to go up on. There's a website called Who Sampled.
Who Sampled? Yes. And
I'd have to go up there and look at each song, which would be crazy because it would take me a week to look at all of that.
Yeah, I think it's about 652, and then there's like about just under 60 covers of some of the music you've written. So
He's done a research.
Yeah. So everybody listening, if you want to know who's been sampled in his music, go to whosampled.com. It's a great resource. I definitely used it myself. Yeah. There was another one I wanted to mention. Love, hurry up this way. Oh, Love TKO. Escape. Jermaine Dupri used that in an Escape song. Who Can I Run To? That's one of my favorite Jones right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love TKO. So lots of music. And speaking of producers and sampling, you have your son has actually followed in your footsteps a bit in following the music trail. Your son Andrew,
Yeah,
we all know as Pop.
Yeah, he started out ghosting with Chris Brown and Nicki Minaj, and then him and Nicki would actually hook up with each other up in New York. I used to have to put him on a bus to New York so he could work with Nicki. She was signed to the label, but she was doing nothing but duets at the time, you know, rapping with other singers and stuff for that label. I can't remember the name of the label. She was I can't, but anyway, so
Not Cash Money.
yeah, Cash Money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cash
She
Money.
was with Cash Money, and so he started writing songs for her and music for her, and had a got his first #1 record with Nicki Minaj, and it's called Your Love. You know,
Okay.
and yeah, that was a #1 record. That was his first #1 record. He's had many #1 records since then, and
Yes.
and so many top 10 records since then. He's worked with numerous people. The most important partnership he's had, I think, is with Oak Felder. Him and Oak do a lot of great music together, and they call themselves Pop and Oak.
Yes.
And you can look at their discography. It's pretty amazing, you know. I mean, he's accomplished in 14 years an amazing success as a producer, writer.
Well,
And he has his own label now with Interscope. He calls it Fish Grease.
Fish Grease. Wow.
At first I was saying, well, what does that mean? Then I got it. It's like fish grease is hot.
Yeah, it's hot. It'll scald your skin off you. Yeah. That's a pretty cool name. Yeah. So, I mean, he I've heard him say in an interview that you said to him, and I hope I get this quote right, when are you going to start producing instead of making beats? And that's something that I think when I was watching the interview, it just seemed like that was a pivotal moment to him when his dad, because you know they say the apple don't fall far from the tree, and I'm sure a lot of his talents and you exposing him to music has made him who he is and made him go into it. But you gave him some really good advice that is obviously bringing those successes to him. Right. When you said that to him, when you're going to start producing instead of just making beats, what are the key things that you meant when you said that? Because he just left it like that in the interview.
Well, because making beats is fine and everything, but coming up with great songs along with the beats, coming up with great sounds along with the beats, coming up with good performances along with the beats, that's what production is all about.
All right, all you producers out there listening, that's some key information right there for sure.
Because they all go hand in hand, you know, and one can't survive without the other, literally, you know. And that's what makes a song a success, when it all comes together right, you know, when the words are right, when the melodies are right, when the harmonic structure is right, when the pentameter or the beats are right. You know, that's what makes a song great, or not.
Right.
Absolutely.
All the great music, and I'm honored to be a part of it, and especially the great recording artists and musicians and people that worked at PIR and that worked at Sigma and other places around the world who don't get credits.
True.
You know,
That's
like
right.
the administrative people who do good jobs, you know, and the secretaries and the musicians especially. I got to work with some musicians from the rhythm sections to the string and horn players that were just absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Yes, indeed.
Wow.
And I'm honored to have been a part of that.
Yes,
Wow.
indeed.
Wow.
Well,
Well,
thank you.
on behalf of the citizens of the planet Earth and Mars, we want to thank you.
We want to thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And we look forward to your next project coming out. And of course, everybody can look Dexter up on the web, DexterWansel.com, and all of your social media pages. It's just under Dexter Wansel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be developing those pages now that the album's done, and now that I'm starting these meetings for distribution.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start developing those pages.
Yes, indeed.
Well, keep us in the loop, and we'll do everything we can to promote and let people know about it.
I appreciate that. I really do. Well, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Tisa
you.
Asma.
Yes. Thank you.
absolutely. Peace and blessings to you.
Yes, thank you, Dexter.
And we will talk soon.
Always.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
That was an awesome interview.
Yes, absolutely.